You're unstable, Olivia. You've always been unstable. My mother's voice cut through the noise of the restaurant like a knife through silk. I sat there, frozen, my fork suspended halfway to my mouth. Around us, the dinner crowd continued their conversations, oblivious to the bomb that had just detonated at our table. Mom, I just need a little support while I transition. I managed, my voice trembling. The scholarship is a real opportunity. She dabbed her lips with her napkin, the gesture so refined, so practiced. Support? You mean money. You always mean money. She turned to Mark, my ex-husband, who sat beside her looking smug. Mark was wise to leave you when he did. You're a financial disaster waiting to happen. Mark nodded, actually nodded, as if my mother's words were gospel truth. The man I'd supported through law school, who'd left me 3 months ago for his paralegal, was now my mother's ally in my humiliation. I quit my job for this certification program, I said quietly. I thought you'd be proud that I'm trying to improve myself. Proud? My mother laughed, and several heads turned. You're 32 years old, Olivia, throwing away a stable job for another one of your wild ideas. When will you learn? I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. Without another word, I walked out of that restaurant, leaving behind the remnants of my dignity and the last shred of hope that my mother would ever see me as anything more than a disappointment. I sat in my car outside the restaurant for 20 minutes, watching through the window as my mother and Mark laughed together. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The tears I'd held back inside now flowed freely, hot and bitter against my cheeks. My name is Olivia Bennett. I'm 32 years old, and I'm from Portland, Oregon. If you're watching this story, please subscribe to my channel for more fascinating stories like this one. You won't believe what happens next. Every achievement I'd ever celebrated, my mother had diminished. Every failure, she'd amplified. And now, at my lowest point, when my marriage had crumbled and I was trying to rebuild myself, she'd chosen to align with the man who destroyed me. I thought about the scholarship I'd won for the financial management certification program. It was competitive, prestigious even. But my mother only saw risk, only saw another chance for me to fail. The rain started falling, soft drops against my windshield that matched the tears on my face. I watched them slide down the glass, distorting the restaurant lights into blurry halos. They think I'm powerless, I whispered to myself. They're wrong. Something shifted inside me that night. Not anger exactly, but something colder, more calculated. I'd spent 32 years seeking approval from people who only valued obedience. That ended tonight. The certification program started 2 weeks later. I moved into a tiny studio apartment, sold most of my furniture, and lived on ramen and coffee. My freelance bookkeeping work barely covered rent, but it kept me afloat while I studied 16 hours a day. My mother called once. Just checking if you've come to your senses yet. I hung up without responding. 3 months in, something interesting happened. While organizing my files, I discovered old documents from when I'd managed my mother's investment portfolio during college. She trusted me back then, before Mark convinced her I was incompetent. Curious, I did some research. My mother's current investments were public record through her real estate business. What I found made my stomach drop. She'd made catastrophic decisions. Her portfolio was over-leveraged, her real estate ventures underfunded. She was one market shift away from serious trouble. And Mark, who now advised her, had pushed her toward these risky investments. I saved everything to a secure folder. I didn't know why yet, but instinct told me this information would matter. The next day, I scored top marks on my mid-program evaluation. My professor pulled me aside. You have a gift for this, Olivia. Have you considered consulting work? I smiled for the first time in weeks. Actually, yes, I have. That night, I made a list. Not of revenge, but of goals. By this time next year, I would be financially independent, professionally recognized, and completely free from needing my mother's approval. The game had begun. My cousin Bethany called 3 weeks later. We'd been close as kids, drifted apart as adults. I heard about your program, she said, her voice honey-sweet. I'm so proud of you, Liv. Something felt off. Bethany had never shown interest in my career before. Thanks, I said cautiously. How did you hear about it? Oh, family talk. She paused. Actually, I have a friend who might need some financial consulting. Small business stuff. Would you be interested? I should have been suspicious. Instead, I was desperate. Absolutely. Send me the details. The consultation went well. Bethany's friend needed basic bookkeeping help, and I provided it efficiently. But afterward, Bethany asked strange questions. So, what exactly are you learning? Is it just basic accounting or something more advanced? Advanced financial management, I answered. Portfolio analysis, risk assessment, investment strategy. Fascinating, she murmured. Mom will be so interested to hear about this. My blood ran cold. Bethany's mother was my mother's sister, her closest confidant and biggest enabler. That evening, I created a separate email account and started documenting every conversation with family members. If Bethany was feeding information back, I needed to control the narrative. I also started planting seeds. Small comments about how well I was doing, how many opportunities were opening up, how my professors kept praising my work. If they wanted information, I'd give it to them. Just not the information they expected. Mark's LinkedIn profile was a goldmine of arrogance. He posted constantly about his fresh start and exciting new ventures. What he didn't realize was that every post revealed information about his business decisions, his partnerships, and his spectacular overconfidence. I'd kept our joint credit card, the one he forgot to cancel. I didn't use it, but I could see his transactions. Designer suits, expensive dinners, a new car lease. All on credit, all way beyond his means. One post particularly caught my attention. He'd invested in a real estate development project, boasting about his business acumen and tagging my mother in the post. My mother commented, "So proud to have Mark as a business partner. Some people know how to make smart decisions." The dig was obvious. But what they didn't know was that I'd already researched that development project. It was poorly planned, undercapitalized, and facing zoning issues. The developers had a history of failed projects. I downloaded everything. Bank statements, project documents, public records. I created a timeline of their decisions, highlighting every red flag they'd ignored. I wasn't planning revenge. I was building a safety net. When their house of cards collapsed, and it would collapse, I needed to ensure I wouldn't be dragged down with them. My professor had once said, "The best financial managers don't just react to crises. They anticipate them." I was anticipating. 4 months into my program, I discovered a critical error in my mother's quarterly tax filing. She'd misclassified several investments, which would trigger an audit if not corrected immediately. I sat with the information for 2 days, debating. Part of me wanted to let it play out, to watch her face consequences for once. But a larger part remembered that her financial collapse could affect other family members, people who'd been kind to me. I sent an anonymous email to her accountant, a man I'd worked with years ago. Review Q2 investment classifications. Potential audit risk. 3 days later, her accountant fixed it. My mother never knew how close she'd come to disaster, never knew I'd saved her. But I knew, and somehow that knowledge gave me power. My certification program was going brilliantly. I'd connected with a mentor, Theodore Walsh, a retired financial consultant who saw potential in me. He offered to introduce me to potential clients to help me build a consulting practice. "You have something rare," Theodore told me over coffee. "You understand both the numbers and the people behind them. That's valuable." I started taking small consulting jobs, building my reputation quietly. My mother probably heard about it through Bethany, but she dismissed it. I was still unstable Olivia in her mind. That blindness would be her undoing. The family gathering at Christmas was unbearable. My mother held court, Mark beside her like a loyal puppy. They talked about their business ventures, their successes, their plans. I sat quietly in the corner, observing. My Aunt Patricia kept glancing at me with pity. My Uncle Howard asked once about my little program. "It's going well," I said simply. "I graduate in 2 months." "That's nice, dear," he replied, already looking away. Only my grandmother seemed genuinely interested. What will you do after graduation? She asked, her eyes sharp behind her glasses. Consulting, I answered. I've already lined up 3 clients through my mentor. She nodded slowly. Good. Don't let anyone make you feel small for having ambition. Later, I overheard my mother talking to my aunt. Olivia's playing at business again. She'll give up in 6 months, just like everything else. Thank God Mark got away when he did. I smiled into my wine glass. Let them think I was failing. Let them stay comfortable in their assumptions. Meanwhile, I'd just secured a consulting contract with a mid-sized firm that would pay more than my previous full-time job. My first project would start in January, right after graduation. The pieces were falling into place. Graduation day arrived in February. I walked across that stage, received my certification with honors, and looked out at the empty seats where my mother might have sat. Theodore was there, beaming with pride. My grandmother came too, surprising me. Your grandfather would be proud, she whispered, hugging me tight. Don't let Margaret's bitterness poison your success. Margaret. My mother. Even my grandmother saw the toxicity. The consulting work exploded after graduation. Theodore's network was golden, and my reputation grew through word of mouth. Within 3 months, I had more clients than I could handle. I hired an assistant, moved into a better apartment, started rebuilding my savings. My mother heard about it, of course. Bethany had probably reported every detail. But when I ran into my mother at a family wedding, she barely acknowledged my success. Consulting, she said dismissively. That's not a real career, Olivia. It's unstable, no benefits, no security. It pays well, I replied calmly. Better than my old job. She sniffed. Money isn't everything. Mark and I are building something sustainable, something that will last. I thought about the detailed files I'd been maintaining on their real estate venture. The project was 3 months behind schedule, 20% over budget, and facing serious contractor issues. I'm sure you are, I said, smiling. I wish you all the best with that. Her eyes narrowed, sensing something in my tone she couldn't quite identify. The networking event was small, just 50 financial professionals in downtown Portland. I wasn't supposed to be there. Theodore had given me his ticket when he fell ill. I almost didn't go. Imposter syndrome whispered that I didn't belong among these established consultants. But I went anyway, wearing my best suit and fake confidence. The keynote speaker discussed market trends and risk management. During the Q&A, I asked a question about emerging investment strategies. My question impressed several people, and afterward, 3 consultants approached me. One was Victoria Chin. No, wait, I can't use that name. One was Victoria Harper, a senior consultant at a major firm. She was recruiting for her team. Your question showed real insight, she said. Are you available for contract work? By the end of the evening, I had 2 new major clients and an invitation to speak at a regional conference. Bethany called the next day. I heard you were at some fancy networking thing. How did that happen? Professional development, I answered vaguely. It's important to stay connected. Mom says you're probably exaggerating your success. She says consultants always oversell themselves. I laughed softly. Sure, Bethany. Tell her whatever makes her comfortable. After we hung up, I looked at my calendar. 6 months ago, I'd been sitting in my car outside a restaurant crying. Now I had more work than I could handle and a growing reputation. The transformation was happening. My mother's financial situation was deteriorating faster than I'd predicted. The real estate development Mark had convinced her to invest in was collapsing. Contractors were threatening liens, investors were demanding answers, and the project timeline had been pushed back indefinitely. I knew because I'd made it my business to know. I attended city council meetings where the project was discussed, reviewed public records, monitored contractor complaints. All legal, all public information. I just paid attention where others didn't. The concerning part was how much money my mother had tied up in it. She'd mortgaged her own property, convinced by Mark that this was a can't-miss opportunity. I pulled up my detailed financial analysis. If the project failed completely, she'd lose everything. Her house, her savings, her retirement. And she had no backup plan, no safety net. Part of me felt satisfied. She was facing consequences for her arrogance, her dismissiveness, her cruelty. But another part, the part that remembered childhood bedtime stories and birthday cakes, felt something else. Not quite sympathy, but awareness. She was still my mother. I started quietly moving my own assets into protected accounts. If her collapse came, I wouldn't be dragged down. I'd worked too hard to rebuild. Theodore noticed my distraction during our next meeting. Something on your mind? Family complications, I admitted. Financial ones. He nodded knowingly. The hardest clients are always family. Mark's Facebook posts grew increasingly desperate by summer. The confident boasts had given way to vague references about challenges and temporary setbacks. He'd deleted the posts about the real estate project. At a family barbecue in July, I watched him work the crowd. He was fundraising, though he didn't call it that. Investment opportunities, he called them, trying to rope uncles and cousins into his failing project. My Uncle Howard pulled me aside. Your mother says Mark's project is revolutionary. Should I invest? Do your due diligence, I said carefully. Research the developers, check public records, review the timeline. Make an informed decision. But what do you think? He pressed. I met his eyes. I think you should protect your retirement savings. He nodded slowly, understanding what I couldn't say directly. Later, I overheard Mark talking to my mother. We need more capital, Margaret. If we can just get through the next 3 months, we'll turn the corner. How much more? She asked, her voice tight. Another 50,000. We can refinance your house again. My grandmother, sitting nearby, caught my eye. She shook her head slowly, her expression sad. I pulled out my phone and documented the conversation in my notes. Not for revenge, but for protection. When this collapsed, my mother would try to blame others. I needed evidence of her own decisions. My career reached a new milestone in August. I was invited to speak at a regional financial conference, presenting on risk management strategies. The audience included my competitors, potential clients, and industry leaders. I was terrified, but Theodore had coached me, helped me refine my presentation, reminded me that I'd earned this opportunity through merit. The presentation went flawlessly. I discussed real-world case studies, including one about over-leveraged real estate investments, carefully anonymized, but anyone who knew my mother's situation would recognize the parallels. During Q&A, someone asked about family businesses and financial boundaries. The hardest part, I said, is maintaining objectivity when emotions are involved. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for family is refuse to enable poor decisions. The applause was genuine. Several people approached me afterward with job offers and consulting requests. Victoria Harper found me during the reception. That was brilliant, Olivia. We'd like to offer you a permanent consulting position with our firm. Full benefits, competitive salary, and you'd maintain your independent clients. I accepted on the spot. That evening, Bethany called. Mom heard about your conference thing. She says you're showing off. I'm building a career, I corrected. She says your success is luck, not skill. That consulting is just talking, not real work. I smiled, thinking about the job offer I'd just accepted. Tell her whatever helps her sleep at night. The first domino fell in September. A major investor in Mark's development project filed a lawsuit claiming fraud and misrepresentation. The local news picked up the story, naming Mark and my mother as co-investors and project advocates. I watched the news report with mixed feelings. This was it, the beginning of the collapse I'd been anticipating for months. My mother called me for the first time in weeks. Did you see the news? I did. It's all lies, she insisted. Bitter investors making up stories. Mark says we'll win in court. Mom, have you reviewed the project documents? The timelines, the budget overruns, the contractor complaints. Mark handles all that. He's the expert. Is he though? The question slipped out before I could stop it. What's that supposed to mean? Her voice turned cold. Nothing. I hope you're right. I hope it all works out. After we hung up, I received a call from my Uncle Howard. Olivia, I need your advice. Margaret asked me to help her refinance. Should I? This was the moment. I could say nothing, let my mother dig deeper into disaster. Or I could use what I knew to help. Uncle Howard, I can't advise you directly, without reviewing all the documents. But I can tell you that any financial decision should be based on complete information, not family pressure. She says I'm being disloyal if I don't help. Loyalty isn't the same as wisdom. The recognition came unexpectedly. A major financial magazine published their annual list of rising consultants under 40. My name appeared on page 3, with a full paragraph describing my work and recent conference presentation. Victoria sent the article to our entire firm with a note. Proud to have Olivia on our team. My phone exploded with congratulations from colleagues, clients, and former classmates. Theodore called, his voice choked with emotion. I knew you had it in you, kid. My grandmother sent flowers to my office with a card. Your grandfather always said Bennett women were unstoppable. Prove him right. Bethany called, sounding confused. There's an article about you in some magazine. Mom saw it at her accountant's office. Did she? I asked, genuinely curious about her reaction. She said the magazine probably needed to fill space, that they include anyone these days. I laughed, not with bitterness, but with genuine amusement. My mother was watching me succeed and still couldn't acknowledge it. Well, thank her for the support, I said dryly. That evening, Mark sent me a LinkedIn connection request. I declined it. 2 days later, I received a strange message from an unknown number. You think you're so smart. Pride comes before a fall. I saved the message, added it to my documentation file, and blocked the number. The campaign against me was beginning. October brought colder weather and hotter drama. Mark's lawsuit intensified. Discovery revealed financial irregularities in the development project, missing funds, falsified documents, contractor payments that never happened. The local news covered it extensively. Mark's face appeared on television, looking haggard and defensive. My mother stood beside him at a press conference, claiming they were victims of contractor incompetence. But the evidence suggested otherwise. Mark had been siphoning money from the project, using it to fund his lifestyle. My mother, as co-investor, was legally liable. I watched it unfold, with clinical detachment. This wasn't my doing. I'd simply anticipated what their arrogance would bring. My grandmother called, worried. Margaret's going to lose everything, isn't she? Probably, I admitted. Unless she makes some very smart decisions very quickly. Will you help her? The question hung in the air. Would I? Should I? If she asks me directly, I'll consider it, I said finally. But I won't volunteer. She needs to recognize she needs help. She's too proud for that. Then she'll learn about pride the hard way. My grandmother sighed. You sound like your grandfather. He used to say that sometimes the best teacher is natural consequences. I thought about that conversation for days. Was I being cruel? Or was I simply refusing to enable destructive behavior? I didn't have an answer yet. The confrontation came at my grandmother's birthday dinner in early November. My mother arrived late, looking stressed. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her usual perfect appearance was slightly disheveled. Mark didn't come. Rumor was he'd been advised by his lawyer to avoid public appearances. After dinner, my mother found me on the porch. We need to talk. Okay, I said, leaning against the railing. I need your help, she began, then stopped. No, that's not right. I need your advice. Professional advice. I'll pay you. This was unexpected. About the development project? About everything. Her voice cracked. I made mistakes, Olivia. I trusted Mark, and I was wrong. The project is failing, and I'm going to lose the house unless I can restructure my debt. I studied her face. No apology yet, no acknowledgement of how she'd treated me. But this was a start. I need to review everything, I said carefully. All your accounts, all your debts, all your assets. Complete transparency. Will you find a way to save the house? I'll find the best possible path forward. That might not include saving everything. She flinched. Your grandmother thinks I should have listened to you months ago. She's not wrong. My mother's pride visibly battled with desperation. Desperation 1. Can we start this week? I'll send you my contract tomorrow. My cousin Felix, who I'd barely spoken to in years, called me 2 days later. Heard you're helping Aunt Margaret. That's good of you. It's a professional arrangement, I corrected. Still, family's family. That matters. He paused. Actually, I wanted to tell you that I never believed what your mom said about you. Some of us saw through it. This was news. What did she say? That you were irresponsible, that you wasted opportunities, that Mark left because you were unstable. But I remember you from college. You were the only one who helped me with my business plan. You were solid. His words meant more than I expected. Thanks, Felix. Also, I run a small investment firm now. If you ever want to collaborate on projects, let me know. After we hung up, I felt something shift. Not all my family had bought my mother's narrative. Some had been quietly supportive all along. My business partner Theodore called that afternoon. Heard you're taking on your mother as a client. Bold move. Or stupid, I admitted. Time will tell. Just protect yourself legally. Document everything. And Olivia? Don't expect gratitude. People rarely appreciate the surgeon cutting out their cancer. That evening, I pulled up all my mother's financial records. The situation was worse than I'd thought. She was 3 months from bankruptcy, 2 months from foreclosure. But there was a path forward. Narrow, difficult, but possible. I started drafting the rescue plan. The family Thanksgiving gathering was tense. Everyone knew about my mother's financial crisis. Everyone had opinions. My Aunt Patricia suggested my mother just declare bankruptcy. Start fresh. You're young enough to rebuild. My Uncle Howard argued for family loans. We should all chip in, help Margaret through this rough patch. I sat quietly, eating my turkey, listening to people who had no idea what they were talking about. Finally, my grandmother rapped her fork against her wine glass. Enough. Olivia, you've been reviewing Margaret's situation. What's your professional assessment? All eyes turned to me. My mother looked simultaneously hopeful and resentful. Bankruptcy would destroy her credit for 7 years, I said calmly. Family loans would strain relationships and solve nothing without addressing the core problems. What she needs is a complete financial restructuring, immediate asset liquidation, and a 5-year recovery plan. That sounds harsh, my aunt protested. It's realistic, I corrected. The alternative is losing everything. My mother's voice was barely audible. The house can be saved if you're willing to make hard choices. Sell the investment properties, settle the lawsuit, downsize significantly. Your retirement accounts are protected by law. You won't be destitute, but you won't be comfortable either. And Mark, someone asked. Mark needs his own attorney. His legal issues are separate from my mother's financial ones. The table fell silent. My mother stared at her plate, processing. When do we start? She finally asked. Monday morning. My office. 9 a.m. Bring everything. Mark's world collapsed in December. The lawsuit verdict came back against him. Fraud, breach of contract, financial misrepresentation. The judgment was devastating. Millions in damages, potential criminal charges pending. My mother had already separated her finances from his per my advice. She was named in the lawsuit but settled quickly, paying restitution from the sale of her investment properties. It hurt financially, but it kept her out of criminal court. Mark called me, desperate. Olivia, please. You helped your mother. Help me. I helped my mother because she asked, because she admitted she needed help. You're calling me after exhausting every other option. I'm begging you. Mark, you left me when I needed support. You aligned with my mother against me. You made decisions that hurt people, including her. Why would I help you now? Because you're a good person, he tried. I'm a smart person. There's a difference. Good luck with your legal troubles. I hung up, feeling nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt. Just closure. Bethany called an hour later, angry. How can you abandon Mark? He's family. He divorced me, Bethany. He stopped being family the day he left me, for his paralegal. But your mom. My mom asked for help and followed my advice. Mark wants a miracle without consequences. I can't provide that. The family split over this. Some thought I was cruel. Others, like Felix and my grandmother, understood. I focused on my work. Christmas dinner at my grandmother's house was different this year. My mother arrived alone, driving a modest used car instead of her luxury sedan. Mark was nowhere to be seen. I'd helped her sell most of her properties, restructure her debt, and create a realistic budget. She'd kept her house but downsized her lifestyle dramatically. No more country club, no more designer clothes, no more expensive vacations. She looked smaller somehow, humbled. Before dinner, I presented my work to the family, not to gloat, but because they deserved to understand what had happened. 8 months ago, I sat in a restaurant and listened to my mother call me unstable. I began. She praised Mark for leaving me. She dismissed my scholarship, my certification, my ambitions. My mother's face flushed, but she didn't interrupt. Since then, I completed my certification with honors. I built a consulting practice. I was recognized in a national magazine. I joined a prestigious firm. And when my mother needed help, I provided it professionally and effectively. I pulled up a presentation on my laptop, showing the family my mother's financial trajectory before and after my intervention. Without restructuring, she would have filed bankruptcy by January. Instead, she's stable, solvent, and has a path forward. That's what I did with my unstable approach to life. The room was silent. Then my Uncle Howard started clapping. Felix joined him. My grandmother too. Within moments, most of the family was applauding. Not for my mother's misfortune, but for my competence, my resilience, my success. My mother sat motionless, tears sliding down her cheeks. The evening after Christmas, my mother appeared at my apartment door. No warning, no call ahead. "Can we talk?" she asked. I let her in, offered tea, waited. "I was wrong about you," she said finally. "About everything. You were never unstable. I was. I was so afraid of your independence, your confidence, your willingness to take risks. You reminded me of everything I'd given up when I married your father. This was unexpected. You regretted marrying Dad?" "No. I loved your father, but I gave up my career for him, and I resented it. When you refused to do the same, when you kept pushing forward despite setbacks, I saw my own cowardice reflected back. So, I tore you down instead of celebrating you." She twisted her hands together. "And Mark, God, I was so wrong about Mark. He flattered me, made me feel wise and successful. He played on my resentments. I should have seen through him." "Yes," I agreed simply. "You should have. Can you forgive me?" I thought about it honestly. Eventually, maybe. But not yet. "You hurt me deeply, Mom. You allied with my ex-husband against me. You dismissed my achievements and celebrated my failures. That doesn't heal overnight. What do I need to do? Respect my boundaries. Acknowledge my expertise. Stop trying to control my life. Treat me as an equal, not a child you're disappointed in." She nodded slowly. "I can do that. I'll try to do that." Trying isn't enough. Doing is. Mark called me one final time in January. "Your mother won't help me. Can you at least talk to her?" "No. Olivia, I'm going to lose everything. The house, my license, possibly my freedom. You know what that feels like." "I do. You were there when it happened to me, remember? You left me when I was at my lowest. You called me unstable. You sided with my mother against me. This is called consequences, Mark. Welcome to them." "I'm sorry," he said, and maybe he meant it. "I'm truly sorry for how I treated you. Sorry doesn't erase actions. It doesn't rebuild trust. It's just a word people say when they want something. What can I do? Learn from this. Be better with the next person. But understand that you and I are done. No friendship, no favors, no redemption arc. You're not my problem anymore." That's cold. That's healthy boundaries. Something I should have established years ago. After I hung up, I felt lighter. The last thread connecting me to my failed marriage had finally snapped. My phone rang again immediately. Theodore's name appeared on the screen. "I've got a proposition for you," he said. "A major firm in Seattle wants you to head their new consulting division. Big salary, total autonomy, chance to build something from scratch." "When do they want an answer?" "They want to meet you next week." I looked around my apartment, at the life I'd rebuilt from nothing. Set up the meeting. Let's see what they're offering. The Seattle job offer was extraordinary. 6 figures, benefits, team leadership, the works. I negotiated for 2 days before accepting. I called my mother to tell her, not to ask permission, not to seek approval, but to inform her as a courtesy. "That's wonderful, Olivia," she said, and she sounded sincere. "You've earned it. I'll need to transition your account to someone else," I explained. "I can recommend several excellent consultants." "What if I need you specifically? Then we'll schedule calls. I'm your daughter, not your financial hostage." She laughed, a sound I hadn't heard in years. "Fair point. I'm proud of you, Olivia. I should have said that a long time ago." "Yes, you should have." The family threw me a going-away party. My grandmother gave me her blessing and a check. "Your grandfather's life insurance. I've been saving it for when you needed it most. Use it to start your new life right." Felix hugged me. "You're going to kill it in Seattle. Stay in touch." "Absolutely." My mother stood awkwardly to the side, not quite part of the celebration, but present nonetheless. Before I left, she pulled me aside. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness yet, but I want you to know that watching you succeed despite everything, despite me, taught me more than any therapy could. You're remarkable, Olivia. Don't ever let anyone make you forget that." I hugged her briefly. "I won't. And Mom, work on yourself. Be the person you should have been all along." My first day in Seattle was perfect. The office was modern, my team was talented, and the work was challenging in the best way. I thought about the journey that brought me here. The humiliation in that restaurant, the desperate months of survival, the quiet rebuilding, the strategic patience. My mother had wanted me small, controllable, dependent. Instead, I'd become capable, independent, unstoppable. The key wasn't revenge. It was refusing to accept others' definitions of me. It was building competence so undeniable that even my harshest critic had to acknowledge it. I'd saved my mother's finances not because I owed her, but because I could. Because competence means helping even when it's not deserved, because that's what professionals do. That evening, Victoria took me to dinner to celebrate my first day. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Like I'm finally where I'm supposed to be. Your mother must be so proud." I smiled. "She's learning to be. It's a process. Family often is." Victoria raised her glass. "To Olivia Bennett, who turned rejection into rocket fuel." I clinked my glass against hers. "To new beginnings." Later, scrolling through social media, I saw Bethany had posted about me. "Cousin Olivia started her dream job in Seattle today. So proud of her success." No mention of the doubt, the gossip, the information feeding to my mother. Just public celebration now that my success was undeniable. I didn't call her out. I just smiled and kept scrolling. 6 months into my Seattle position, I flew home for my grandmother's birthday. The family gathered, and I noticed the changed dynamics immediately. My mother greeted me warmly, asked about my work with genuine interest. She'd paid off half her restructured debt and was considering part-time consulting work herself. Mark wasn't mentioned. He'd moved to another state, starting over under a different name. Felix had expanded his business and wanted my input on a new venture. Uncle Howard asked if I'd review his retirement plan. My Aunt Patricia apologized for ever doubting me. Only my grandmother seemed unsurprised by my success. "I always knew," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "Bennett women don't break. We bend, we adapt, we overcome." During dessert, my mother stood and clinked her glass. The room quieted. "I want to say something," she began, her voice unsteady. 2 years ago, I told my daughter she was unstable. I aligned with her ex-husband against her. I dismissed her dreams and celebrated her struggles. I was wrong about everything. The room was silent. Olivia rebuilt herself despite me, not because of me. She succeeded when I predicted failure. And when I needed help, when I'd lost everything because I didn't listen to her, she saved me anyway. That's not just competence. That's character. She turned to me, tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry I wasn't the mother you deserved, but I'm grateful for the daughter you became anyway." The family erupted in applause. Real, genuine, sustained applause. I stood and hugged my mother, feeling years of hurt begin to finally, slowly heal. "Thank you," I whispered. "No," she replied. Thank you for refusing to become what I tried to make you. That night, driving back to my hotel, I thought about the girl who'd walked out of that restaurant 2 years ago. She'd been broken, dismissed, alone. Now she was whole, respected, surrounded by people who valued her. The journey hadn't been about proving my mother wrong. It had been about proving myself right, about trusting my instincts, building my skills, refusing to accept others' limitations. My phone buzzed with a text from Theodore. Heard about your family dinner. Proud of you, kid. You didn't just succeed. You transformed. I smiled, typing back. Learned from the best. Seattle was waiting. My team had a major project starting Monday. Life was full, challenging, purposeful. I'd started with nothing but determination and a scholarship. I'd built a career, saved my mother's finances, earned my family's respect, and most importantly, proved to myself that I was capable of anything. My mother had refused to support me. She'd called me unstable, aligned with my enemy, dismissed my dreams. And in doing so, she'd given me the greatest gift possible, the motivation to become unstoppable. I posted a final update on my channel before bed. 2 years ago, I lost everything. Today, I have more than I ever imagined. Not because someone gave it to me, but because I refused to stay down. To everyone facing doubt and dismissal, your critics are wrong. Prove it. Subscribe for more stories of transformation and triumph. The likes and comments poured in. Hundreds of people sharing their own stories of overcoming family doubt, of building success despite opposition. I wasn't just sharing my story. I was starting a movement, and it was just beginning.